I asked Michael why it was easier to train oil drillers to become astronauts than it was to train astronauts to become oil drillers, and he told me to shut the fuck up. So that was the end of that talk. He was like, Ben, just shut up, okay? This is a real plan, all right? I was like, you mean it's a real plan at NASA to train oil drillers? He was like, just shut your mouth. See, here's where we demonstrate that, because Bruce is going to tell the guys that they did a bad job of building the drill tank. He did a piss. See, he's a salt of the earth guy, and the NASA nerdonauts don't understand his salt of the earth ways, his rough and tumble ways.
I'm sure they'll make good astronauts, but they don't know jack about drilling.
I mean, this is a little bit of a logic stretch, let's face it. They don't know jack about drilling. How hard can it be? Aim the drill at the ground and turn it on.
You're tall, but I'm standing in front of you.
It's a podcast. I guess it's an important bit that, well, Deep Impact, it's a comet, right?
I don't know the difference. I wasn't really paying attention to the astrological
What is it in
differences.
Armageddon? Is it an asteroid
Astronomical.
it seems like it would be an asteroid for Armageddon. That seems like what they would do.
Let's look into this. This is what the people are are looking for.
That's
We
an
can't go into
asteroid.
this episode not prepared.
It's an
Okay.
asteroid the size
And
of
is Deep
Texas.
Impact a comet then?
That's what I
Yeah.
thought. Yeah, because they just have to be fucking fans. It's a thinking man's film. So theirs is gonna, of course, it can't just be an asteroid.
Yeah, yeah. What's the difference between a comet and an asteroid?
I don't know. The comet, yeah, great question. Comet versus asteroid.
A comet is an icy small solar system body that warms and begins to release gases when passing close to the sun.
Well, comets are made of ice, dust, and rock. Asteroids are composed of rock and metal.
Well, see, yeah, so I mean, well, that is reflected
Important.
accurately in the film.
Important plot points. So they did
It
their
does seem
homework,
like,
surely.
the asteroid would be worse, right?
You'd think, yeah, yeah.
And asteroids, they sometimes come in a belt. That's another important distinction.
That is true. I have heard that.
Yeah, you don't really get belts of comets.
Yeah. Comets mostly like what? Like,
They're like lone wolves.
yeah, they mostly just augur the birth and death of Mark Twain is their main
Yeah.
purpose. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyway, folks, welcome to Your Tall But I'm Saying in front of you, the podcast where two friends circling the drain of academia examine the cultural detritus of the 20th century. I'm Devin.
I'm Ethan.
How's it going, buddy?
I mean, it's not great in a worldly sense. And I know you always are like, well, we're not talking about that when I ask you, but it is what sure seems to be looming ever larger in the periphery as we,
Yeah. It's almost like metaphorically, there's like a very large body of some kind heading towards us, and that it doesn't bode well for the future unless we can somehow collectively do something about it.
yeah, nukes.
And so that's what we're talking about today. Ethan, why don't you tell the folks about this special dual episode?
This is, correct me if I'm wrong, but we do this. only do this, it seems like. Like, remember when the Titan sub imploded? So we're like, we're gonna do a Titanic episode. And it took us 8 months to actually do it.
Yeah.
Um, and there was a brief moment, like a month or two ago, when they're like, "Hey, asteroid might hit Earth in a few years," and then they've now it sort of went away in the news, so I'm
I
assuming
think
we're
they said
okay.
like, oh yeah, we recalculated it. It's fine actually.
Yeah, probably. We're probably fine. We won't confirm that on this podcast, but I think that was the basis for wanting to do this, right?
Yeah, and then it's like we write it down and then
Yeah.
we get to it.
But it's all, I mean, it ended up
Um,
being very, I think, appropriate beyond the scope of whether or not we will be destroyed from the sky in, a few years or not. We watched 1998's Deep Impact and 1998's Armageddon. The
Absolutely.
yeah, the dueling
Um,
how would you say,
the first, yeah,
yeah,
dueling disaster,
disaster films, yeah.
comet slash asteroid disaster movies, right?
Yeah.
And one of the classic examples of that phenomenon where like, two movies come out the same year about the same thing.
Yeah.
Like The Prestige and The Illusionist is a big one. Ed TV and The Truman Show, that kind of like pop culture phenomenon.
Dante's Peak and Volcano, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
That was the
Yeah.
year before this. That was 97. And they're like, volcanoes, that's
Mm-hmm.
old news, friend. We're going
Yeah. And
extraterrestrial.
the way I think about this, these aren't really just cosmic coincidences, right? But they're multiple things. One, they tell us something on an abstract level about like the concerns of the time, right? Because even if these films don't reflect them, they at least lead to like a year of people talking about like, oh, hey, what if an asteroid did hit? But they
Mm-hmm.
also just kind of tell us about um, this era of cinema where one studio finds out the other studio's making an asteroid movie. They realize they have an asteroid movie on the back burner, and they're like, "Oh shit! If we release that in 3 years, that's even worse." Right?
Yep. Yep.
Um, you don't want to be a ripoff. You want to just seem like you are of a moment. So in a weird way, just
Hmm.
kind of these very basic profit motives produce these almost like false cultural moments. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Has anyone ever talked about that? Has anyone ever thought about this sort of cycle between like the base and the superstructure? I feel like that would we should I think we're digging into it first on this podcast.
Yeah,
There seems
it's
to be
it,
something going on.
it's like there's some kind of relationship between like the material base and like the other things, but also that it's like complex and not just kind of unidirectional.
Right. Between the material base and Michael Bay. I think we're zeroing in on it. Those are
The
the
two
two levels.
MBs. The two
Yeah.
MBs. And that's of course not to erase Deep Impact's director Mimi Leader, who somewhat embarrassingly I think becomes the first female director covered on the podcast.
Oh,
Is this
really?
true? So I will offer a defense and an apology, which is sorry. Um,
Mm.
but also it is, I just want to remind people of a podcast about bad movies. So
It's a
consider
good
like,
point.
do you want to listen to Ethan and I shitting on movies by female directors?
We
Like
love Zero Dark 30. We would never
that's
disparage
actually
that
that actually is
masterpiece.
that's a good one for us actually. That's in our
Yeah,
wheelhouse of the things we talk about.
yeah.
Um, you know, it's
Ugh.
not really in our wheelhouse to talk about like Chantal Ackerman or whatever. But we should amend that further. But we are very
Mhm.
happy to have Mimi Leader's film on the docket for today. So with this episode, Ethan, I think we're gonna talk about these two films, but I think we're also trying to do more. We're not gonna just like talk about one and then talk about the other, although we'll do some of that. But I think the main thing we want to think about is what we learn by thinking about these films together and
Mhm.
how they imagine what the response to a comet and or asteroid coming to Earth and destroying it would be. And I actually think I was surprised because I hadn't seen either before. I think
Wow.
it's actually I think both these movies are bad and not particularly interesting.
Yeah.
on their own, although I think
Right.
Armageddon's more interesting than Deep Impact. But
Mm,
together, I think they actually are an incredible pairing because ideologically they're way more different than I thought they were going to be. Like they almost show
absolutely.
us just like what the two politically legible options were at the time. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah. I could not agree more. That I'm just shocked that you never saw either of these films, even when they came out. That like these were
Mm.
two of the biggest. I mean, Armageddon was the biggest blockbuster of 1998. So,
Yeah.
uh,
I was very aware of them, and I think even by the age of 9, and this like maybe tells you about what a piece of shit I am. I think already by the age of 9, I like looked down on Michael Bay. Like I was like, that's stupid. I want to watch Seven Samurai. Which to be clear is not me tooting my own horn. I think it's like it was probably very annoying and silly.
this is honestly though, you know, it was a very problematic film in so many ways. So,
Yeah. Well, I do have to say
maybe
with
for the best.
usually when I go back to like revisit like I remember being really down on Anchorman at the time. I never watched it, but I was sort of like, "Oh, these are the dumb comedies everyone's quoting in like
Yeah.
the hallways." And so I was very like pretentious about it. When I go back and watch Anchorman now, I'm like, "Holy shit, I was such an idiot. This is like an amazing movie, right?"
Sure, sure.
I did not feel that way with Deep Impact and Armageddon. I was like, no, I
Absolutely
was
fucking
right
not.
to think
Yeah.
this was like low cultural denominator stuff.
Yeah, yeah, and I think I saw both of these films when they came out. But the only thing that myself, and I'm gonna project myself onto everybody else that we remember about Deep Impact, I think what people remember is one, you have Morgan Freeman playing the president. I think that's
Yeah,
like a
that I always knew
memorable,
about it.
yeah, that was like a memorable moment of his career is he's playing the president. And then two, maybe that final scene with the daughter and father and the tsunami is coming
Mm-hmm.
at them. Like maybe that's about it.
I would say I always, having not seen it, I did always have like a cultural knowledge of the scene of Elijah Wood on the motorbike at the
Oh,
end.
yeah, yeah,
Like I
yeah.
feel like
That's
that
fair.
was also a big I don't know, you just became aware of that. That was like a scene people talked about and clipped and stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Armageddon, I don't even know. Like I feel like it's hard to differentiate Armageddon, the film, from like itself as a larger product. You know, it's like the
Hmm.
music
Yeah.
videos, like the
It was the
Aerosmith music.
Aerosmith. The
Yeah.
Aerosmith was everywhere, and I did know the Aerosmith, which was also part of me being like, like a punk rock kid being like, fuck Armageddon
Yeah,
at the
yeah.
time. Although now it's like I've listened to that song like 17 times since I watched this movie. Um, there is something about it. It should be our theme song. Um, and I feel like Armageddon was way more of a star-driven movie, right? Like
Yeah.
despite Morgan Freeman in Deep Impact, it was impossible to think about Armageddon without thinking about Bruce Willis, Ben Affleck, Liv Tyler. Like these were the names, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
I also feel like the animal cracker scene actually had a lot of
Oh.
cultural cachet. When Ben Affleck
Mm.
is like walking animal crackers on Liv Tyler's
So
stomach,
fucking yeah, weird.
it's very
Um
weird. The Armageddon's sexual politics is like probably the most interesting thing about either of these movies, but also the most horrific thing about either of these two movies.
yeah. They have that back and forth where the Grace character, Liv Tyler's character, is like, "Baby, do you think it's possible that anyone else in the world is doing this very same thing at this very same moment?" To which Ben Affleck's AJ says, "I hope so. Otherwise, what the hell are we trying to save?" And I don't know how many people are doing animal cracker foreplay at that exact moment,
Yeah.
and I don't know that that's why we want to save humanity. But
But
in the
this is
film's
why
con,
it
yeah,
gets back to that base superstructure stuff we were talking about, where now, or if not now, the summer of 1998, at any given moment, there were probably tons of people doing animal cracker foreplay,
it's
whether
true.
sincerely or facetiously,
Yeah,
because of Armageddon.
yeah, it's true. We used to have it all before Obama. Um, Um,
So I
how do we
don't think we
tackle
want to
this?
get.
Yeah.
So I don't think even we want to get dragged too down in the plot of either of these movies, but
No.
maybe we can give like the one paragraph version, not even paragraph, like the 1 or 2 sentence version of just broad strokes what happens in each of these movies. And I'm talking like broadly premise and then how they resolve it wise.
Okay. How about we do this? How about we each give our one paragraph for each film? Curious how our one paragraphs line up with one another.
All right. So here's what I'm going to say about Deep Impact.
Okay.
Um, they find a comet. Um, Taya Leone is a journalist who like thinks she's uncovering a sex scandal, but instead accidentally finds out that this comet is coming to Earth. Morgan Freeman is like, "Don't worry, we have a plan." All of the plans fail. New York and a bunch of other cities get completely destroyed by the first piece of the comet. Um, but then the majority of Earth is saved because the astronauts whose idea failed decide just to like commit nuclear bomb suicide on the comet, which I'm kind of like, why didn't you just send one person to do that anyway? Like someone with like terminal cancer or something, you know? But and then some people are saved. We see Taya Leone die when because she decides to go like reconcile with her father, but like Elijah Wood, like the young like astronomy uh nerd lives with his like teenage girlfriend slash wife.
Yeah, that's a pretty good summary. What would I say differently than that? I think that to me, I think the premise is uh America, the only country with a telescope, finds that there is this comet coming, and so they keep that under wraps and until, as you mentioned, the journalist accidentally stumbles upon it. And then yeah, Morgan Freeman, the president, just keeps having to explain, well, we fucked that up. That's not it's maybe we'll be okay. But you like it's not like he just has to be the one that keeps coming out and being like, well, it didn't work. So
Yeah,
let's
yeah.
do our best. You need to keep paying your taxes, remember. And seems to be a very clear indication through all of this that like God, the God of this universe wants humanity to be destroyed, and yet humanity's response is like God is great. We God is just so gosh darn swell. We should all be praying right now. Um
Mhm.
and meanwhile, you're being introduced to a number of characters that the more you see them, you're like, yeah, let's get this species over with. This
Yeah,
is
yeah, just like a series
I
of boring and uninteresting
yeah,
people.
yeah. Nothing will be
And no,
lost.
I think we should stop you there because I think that's such an important moment on which to switch to Armageddon in contrast, right? Like, and I'm going to let you do Armageddon first. So, as you've just
Yeah.
said, Deep Impact is we meet a series of uninteresting, indistinct people, and we're
Yep.
kind of just like, yeah, let them all die, and then most of them do, and some of them don't. Armageddon.
Armageddon. You start off, you immediately kill some astronauts and then do 9/11. All right, in the first 10 minutes. So that happens. A bunch of
Yeah,
comics.
like New York is off the table early.
It's fucked real early on. So immediately cut to the most boomer man that has ever existed, Bruce Willis, who's a
Seemingly
who
playing his character from The Last Boy Scout.
absolutely who is better than anyone else. All these fucking NASA scientists, the military folks, he knows better than them, which is probably why they come to him to be like, you need to save us from this asteroid that is coming towards Earth. And so he essentially, throughout the course of the film, repeatedly proves that he knows more than all these fucking
Mhm.
nerds. They go, it doesn't go super great on the asteroid for them, but they do manage to blow up the asteroid right before it hits the line that it cannot cross, which is really close to Earth. But it's okay because we at least do destroy Paris.
Yeah.
And the boomer dad sacrifices
Yeah.
himself to save what would this be a Jet X child, I guess, in
I guess so.
1998?
Yeah. Ben
Yeah, so the
Affleck.
boomer he does what no boomer has ever done, what every boomer fantasizes that they
Says
would
he
do
will
in
do.
this, yeah, which is
That's
sacrifice
so
himself
true.
to save the
Oh,
world.
that's so true. Yeah.
Yeah.
So just a few things I would add. I think
Uh-huh.
a major thing you missed and forgot to mention is
Everyone is a sex
Bruce
pest
Willis.
in this film.
Well,
Also,
that, yeah. But
sorry,
Bruce
what did I
Willis
miss?
specifically is a driller.
Yep.
And so it's not just that he knows everything better than everyone, but he knows drilling. And the idea is they need to drill into this asteroid to blow it up, right? And a lot of people probably know the very famous Ben Affleck commentary on this movie, where he's like
Mhm.
really drunk and making fun of it. And
Yeah.
most people haven't watched that whole thing, but a lot of people have seen a clip where he's like laughing hysterically about like how hard is drilling? Wouldn't it make more sense to teach astronauts to drill, right? And so I always knew that. And so one of my favorite moments watching it for the first time was the fact that the movie acknowledges that. And the
Yep.
explanation is literally just like, yeah, it didn't work. Like, it's like they show up, they're like, here are these astronauts. Yeah, we tried to teach them how to drill, and they like can't, they can't. And
It's
I
too
actually think that's
complicated.
so much more interesting and funnier than if it just didn't acknowledge it, which is what I thought it always did. But
Yeah,
the
no.
fact that they like the movie goes out of its way to be like these drilling is the hardest thing, right?
Yeah.
And
Yep.
because drilling, right, is a metonym in this movie, is a symbol in this movie, not just for drilling, but for the boomer know-how,
Absolutely.
right? Drilling represents all of the things that boomers know from their life experience,
Yep.
or at least that they fantasize knowing, that they're
Yes.
like, if only kids today knew to just walk in and ask for a job,
Yeah.
that they could get one. If only kids knew that they should buy a starter home, like that kind of stuff, all like concatenated into drilling. And also, of course,
Yeah.
the fantasy of like blue collar labor.
Absolutely.
Um, and then the other important thing to note is that Bruce Willis sacrifice is very specifically also revolving around the psychosexual politics of Bruce Willis's like reverse Electra thing with his daughter, Liv Tyler, who he like eventually decides he's okay with Ben Affleck being the. And to be clear, the Ben Affleck Liv Tyler relationship is completely consensual and like we are led to believe completely positive from
Yes.
the jump. It's just that Bruce Willis is like, it's my daughter though, like his daughter who's like a complete adult. Like I don't know how
Yeah.
old she is in this movie, but she reads as like a complete like well into adulthood working woman, right?
Yeah.
And he's like threatening her boyfriend with a gun for like, daring to defile his daughter consensually. But then at the end of the movie, he's like, I've always loved you. I loved you like a son. Marry my daughter. All of the incest stuff in that very like part of the what it's doing,
Absolutely.
um, and then sacrifices himself.
Yeah, I think we've really touched on both of these films very well. So, Devin, I think what makes the most sense, now that we've summarized the films, instead of going into individual plot summaries, is there are some thematic elements that I think are consistent across both
Yeah,
films, and I think maybe let's go through the themes or the plot points of both films and say how they each respond to this element, and that I think will help start to draw us towards what both films are trying to say and where they're kind of ideologically grounded.
absolutely.
So I think the first thing that happens in both films is the finding of the planet killer.
And so in Deep Impact, it's very interesting, right? Because Deep Impact spends a lot of time on the moment of discovery
Yeah.
and kind of complicates it weirdly, right? Because
Very
like it's like
unnecessarily.
this like young Elijah Wood played like amateur night gazer, right?
Yeah.
Finds this comet. It's for like his astronomy club that he's like sending it to this like older astronomer, this like doctor of astronomy.
Hmm.
And he kind of silently, but we later realize is having the revelation that this is on a collision course with Earth. He like runs into a car to like rush this news to like someone and
Yeah.
like ends up getting and there's like a crazy like car crash scene with all this
Yeah.
build up where he gets like owned by a tractor trailer and dies. And so
You know what the
like
trucker is drinking?
I forget.
Jolt Cola.
Oh my
I
God.
don't know if that was a promotional tie-in, but that took me right back to the 90s.
Absolutely.
But
Yeah.
it's bad tie-in because he wasn't staying alert enough. So maybe the all that caffeine and Jolt Cola didn't do the trick
Well,
for
I
the
guess
trucker.
that's why Jolt didn't last.
Didn't make it. Yeah, very unnecessary scene where the other astronomer guy dies and then just nothing comes of that other than that they're
It
like,
doesn't,
he's dead.
yeah, it doesn't really serve any clear plot function because it's like, it just is like, oh yeah, we found out eventually. It just like kind of, because like you jump ahead to like the government already knows about it.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh, there was like a slight delay. Like, okay.
Is it that they thought they needed like an action plot point early on, and
Absolutely.
so
They
they're
just
like,
like
we need
wanted
to
to
just do
have like a
something.
car
Car needs,
crash
yeah,
early.
car needs to blow
Yeah.
up. Yeah, so that's
But
dumb.
yeah, it's very weird. But it's also like, right, Deep Impact has this vision of the sort of like citizen astronomer, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Like the everyman astronomer who through just luck and ingenuity and innate talent finds the comet. And because it's Elijah Wood who ends up being one of the characters that survives at the end, it feels like it's something about like, oh, this is like an argument for part of what's worth saving about humanity.
yeah.
Like this like, innate talent and potential that some humans will have.
Yes, yep. Meanwhile, as we mentioned in Armageddon, just immediately there's a bunch of meteors that start landing all over the place, which I guess is a precursor to the larger
Yeah.
asteroid that is coming, and
It's like an
it's just
opening act.
yeah, the opening act is immediately like the United States. I think they say something too like there are only 8 satellites that can pick this up, and the United States owns 7 of them. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's I don't know, and it's only 18 days away from Earth.
Yeah.
Also, is what
Very
is revealed.
condensed.
There's a very
Right.
tight timeline
Yeah.
involved.
But it's
Yeah,
interesting, right? Because what's going on with both of these plot points is that the movie is solving what is ultimately like sort of a basic entertainment problem, right? Which is they want to have some kind of spectacle early.
yeah,
In the case of the car crash, or in the case of the bombardment of New York with mini asteroids. And it's very interesting the stories the ideological decisions they make for how the story could like provide that. Which is like for Deep Impact, which is the much more lib movie, right? Like
yeah,
that story has to be about like, oh, this great self-sacrificing scientist who's like cut down, unlucky, and the world is just set against these inherently good people, right? And
yeah.
then like Michael Bay's version of that is just like, oh, just some other asteroids happened. Why? Because that's like what I want to happen. I'm God of this movie.
Yeah, like we get to have like a funny scene with Eddie Griffin and his dog that then asteroids are hidden everywhere. And that's just we're just gonna have that scene and move on.
Yeah, yeah.
So the asteroid slash meteor slash comet, whatever, is heading towards Earth. And now the government needs to respond. How would we contrast the responses in both of these films?
Yeah. So I have a much better handle, I feel like, on the Deep Impact one because the president is such a character in Deep Impact, right?
Hmm.
Um, but it's this very like fireside chatsy presentation that the president has where he's always like, we're all in this together and such, and we're gonna pray and we're gonna do this, and I'm explaining this to you reasonably, right? As he is enacting a level of like top-down government control that we have not seen in the post, neoliberal turn era, where
Yeah.
like he's price fixing is like the first thing, right? Where you're like,
Yep.
can you imagine the president proposing price fixes, right?
And I want
In
to, yeah, and I
relation
want to
to a
be clear,
disaster.
not the only thing he freezes, Devin. His exact line is, "I'm freezing all wages, all
Oh
prices."
yes.
Wow.
Oh, I
So,
God, I forgot about that.
yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, hey, um, history of bosses v workers, just go on hold for a minute. No one think that you're gonna get paid more just because you're dying in a year. And
Yeah.
then this is the same approach that is given to when he's announcing that like only like 5% of the human population is going to survive and they're doing a lottery to decide who's doing it and that everyone over 50. So think about this in regards to the boomer question, right? Is
Yeah.
excluded from the lottery. So everyone over 50 besides a few like scientists or whatever or like, politicians are going to die.
That is a great point. And I just want to emphasize, prior to all this happening, there's a big cover up, and the government knows about this for months
Yeah.
in Deep Impact. Again, Armageddon, it seems to be happening really fast.
Yeah, you don't get the sense that there's any breaks in Armageddon. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
just
And
we're there the entire time it's being thought through.
so, as opposed to that live approach in Deep Impact, Armageddon, I guess the government's response is, we need to find the best goddamn driller in the world. We're going to send
Hmm.
the head of Pacific Command to go recruit this brilliant driller guy.
Hmm.
Who's I
Yeah.
tell me if you understood this plot point. They had, because you said like they've been training did they know about the the asteroid for months and they had been training astronauts, they couldn't do it, or like because they had stolen his designs because patents don't exist in space or something, he was
Okay, so
saying.
actually, now that I'm remembering, it's actually that they're initially bringing him in to do the training. He's like, you have 18 days or
Ah,
whatever to teach these guys how to drill. And then Bruce Willis is like, like the drill whisperer, and he's like, you can't teach these men to drill. Drilling is like an art. And
yeah,
then like he's like, my condition is that I get to pick the team that actually does the drilling. And so
yeah,
instead, they train a bunch of drillers to be astronauts in like 10 days.
yep.
But so in terms of government response,
Hmm.
right? This is like an inherently right-wing version of
Yeah,
how do we
yeah,
solve this problem, right? Whereas the liberal version, and to be clear in regards to Deep Impact, I use that pejoratively, is around like trust, competence, trust the technocracy. They're gonna have to keep secrets from you, but it's
yeah.
all the correct thing. We're keeping calm. We're doing this the right way, right? The right wing solution, the Bay solution, right, is to just unleash the power of the boomer. That is, for some reason, people just won't let the boomer fix the problem, which is like
Absolutely.
exactly what every boomer thinks. Like, it's like, we just need to get like, the executive to get rid of all this bullshit and just
Yep.
unleash us.
Yeah, it's like they made their space drill, and he's like, he pulls something out of it. Bruce Willis pulls something out of it. It's like, I don't even know what this is. What did this cost? $400? And it's like, you shouldn't be pulling that out if you don't know what it is, man. But because
Yeah.
he knows everything,
Yeah.
he's making the right
Hmm.
decision.
And it's
And
also like
so,
it's like these astronauts. It's because they do mention like the driller guys are like geologists, a bunch of them, right? Like they have training. They're not just like, even though it simultaneously wants them to essentially be blue collar workers, these are guys with credentials, but it's also like as if NASA doesn't have geologists,
yes. Yeah, I'll give Michael Bay credit. He is aware that MIT is an institution. That is the only university that he mentions, and he mentions it. Apparently, everyone with a degree in Armageddon went to MIT. There's the Jason Isaacs character when he's like, the White
Ugh.
House's chief scientific advisor is a piece of shit. I know because I was his roommate at MIT. And later on, Steve Buscemi's character is like, I've got a degree from MIT. So I'll give it to Michael Bay that he knows MIT is a place where you can get them science degrees. Whereas Deep Impact doesn't really care about that so much as like journalists. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
So,
because like
yeah.
the heroes, that's a big way to understand it differently, right? And well, maybe this gets actually into our next topic, which is not just the government response, but the relationship of the protagonists to the government, right?
Yeah,
Because this movie's idea of who the heroes are is very different.
absolutely. because as we know, the hero in Deep Impact is the meteor, and no, but
Yeah.
it's the main, as you mentioned, we've got Elijah Wood's character, we have the journalism angle on this, and we keep,
Yeah.
seeing Morgan
The
Freeman as the
professional
president of, yeah,
managerial class is the
absolutely.
protagonist of Deep Impact, right? It's the
Yeah.
president, it's a journalist, and it's like a young emerging scientist, right?
Yeah.
It is intellectuals. These are the movers of history, right?
Hmm.
Every solution is technical and administrative and academic.
And then there's Armageddon. How would you describe the cast of protagonists in Armageddon,
Yeah.
Devin?
So these are all objectively like terrible people, right? I
Yeah.
mean, they are unhinged, right? So Bruce Willis's character early on, we see literally chasing Ben Affleck with a gun and shooting at him
Yeah.
because he has had consensual sex with his girlfriend, who is Bruce Willis's daughter, who is a
Correct.
grown adult woman, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and we're meant to think this is like funny and kind of cartoonish and that no one can actually be hurt even though Ben Affleck is in fact like grazed by a bullet, right?
Yes.
Ben Affleck's kind of like a nothing, but like they all have like these vices, right? Like Will
Mhm.
Patton's character, right, is like a degenerate gambler and like an absentee father. Steve Buscemi is like a rapist. Like the
Yes.
movie wants you to read it to as like he's like a horn dog. Like his name is
Uh-huh.
literally Rockhound, and like and we're told that's because he's horny. But like he describes like frequent statutory rape situations, and like in general it's just is a horrible human being.
Yeah. Very bad human being. They like play it for jokes of his like, I didn't know. She never told me her age.
Yeah,
And
this is
it's
supposed to be
really
comic
gross.
relief, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, it's another suggestion of like these behaviors that you think boomers have that are bad. These are actually just sort of like the charming affectations of someone who ultimately knows what they're doing, right?
Uh-huh.
I don't know if anyone else individually is super of interest. Like Michael Clark Duncan's character is kind of just there. Owen Wilson's character is just kind of there to get redshirted at the beginning.
Why was Owen Wilson in this film? I did not understand it. He's there and then he just sort of dies.
He dies like in the crash when they're landing. He doesn't even have like a heroic
Yeah.
death or anything. There's Max,
Yeah.
who's just like the big guy. So it's like you can be, it's also kind of being like, yeah, like this guy's not like in shape, but like the astronauts, but like, he's like one of the dudes. Like, I don't know. It's like all this kind of like,
He has literal brain damage, but he's still smarter than these NASA nerds.
absolutely.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. And
yeah.
they are positioned as outsiders, right? Like they have to be
Yeah.
chased down by helicopters while they're like on motorcycles and horses and shit, right?
Yeah.
And but it's like this ragtag bunch is better than the government, right? And what's interesting about both of these answers, right, is I hate both of them, right? It's
Yeah.
like I don't believe in the capacity of this liberal technocracy, right? Um and yet I live in an era where like after that liberal technocracy has been like torched to shit, I'm kind of like, man, geez, you do kind of long for that sometimes, just in the interim, just like to keep things like in order. Um,
Yeah.
and then like simultaneously, I'm like, well, I want the hero to be the working class, right? But not in this like profoundly reactionary and like proto-fascistic way.
Yeah. Yeah. In the way that literally our first introduction to Bruce Willis is he's teeing a golf ball at activists for his oil rig and
Oh
like
yeah.
making some boomer comment about how their diesel engine uses a bunch of oil. It's what honestly astonished me is all the little zingers and shit that they have throughout this film feels so present in the
Hmm.
sort of like lowered discourse that
Yeah.
exists
Yeah.
everywhere these days with
Yeah.
social
Yeah.
media. So that was, yeah, they're not good people. And of course, I guess
Yeah.
if we're talking about their them vis-a-vis the government, one of the big things that I feel like was one of those lines that stayed from Armageddon is they're saying all the things of like, hey, all of the sex crimes that Steve Buscemi did, that needs to be expunged. You need to do this and this.
Yeah,
And they're like, and one other thing, they never have to pay taxes again if they're gonna go
'cause
drill
it's
this
fuck
thing.
the
Yeah.
government,
Yeah,
right?
because how
And then-
dare you?
Yeah, and you know
It's
what
like you
they really
realize
are?
the ship you're going on to this asteroid was built by the government, right?
Yeah,
Do you
but then
understand
this is
that?
the trap, right? Because then this is the trap of our contemporary legible politics, right? Because then you get trapped in the deep impact side where you're like, yeah, and so like taxes and top-down government is what's good, right? But that lets liberal technocracy off the hook for how it is also complicit in oppressing the working class, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And that's why it's important to point out that even though I'm calling them like they're working class coded, right? I mean that ideologically. These guys are not actually working class. They are business owners, right? They are petty bourgeois, but the aesthetics of their job is this like masculinist vision of what the working class is. And this and that's what's so toxic about it. Is this movie is telling you the only way to be part of the working class is to be like a toxically masculine aggressive, violent piece of shit.
Yes. Correct.
They're government contractors, you know, and that's sort of the that's really the ideological knot that's being like untied is how do you depend on the government while also being able to act like you don't depend on the government? Right? Like that's the problem they're trying to solve. And it's like, oh, be a government contractor. Because then you're like just taking the government's money, but you're sort of outside of the government.
Yeah, definitely. Oh. Is there anything you'd like to say about because they both also have spaceship crews, of which we've talked somewhat because the protagonists literally just get on the spaceship in Armageddon. Whereas in Deep Impact, it's like this other cast of characters that sort of exists for part of the film. So would you say anything about these forgettable people?
Well, the Deep Impact plot is really boring, right? But there is like kind of this tertiary plot with this Robert Duvall led spaceship that ultimately decides to sacrifice itself at the end, right? But it kind of has like just a separate, it's one of the like three stories. And they're just kind of blandly heroic in the way that liberalism can admit of heroism, right? Heroism has to be uncomplicated, honorable, savory, you know, to the liberal palate.
Yeah.
And so because of that, that whole plot sucks ass, right? Because it has no verve, right? And the spaceship crew in Armageddon is like kind of like a half enemy, right?
Yes. Yeah, because they're still of the government. So
yeah, and then so they are the way that like the government has bodies on the asteroid who then either have to die or get flipped to the side of the drillers, the side of the like kind of, you know, reactionary pseudo working class.
Yeah. Yeah. It does lead us to one of the best lines of Armageddon that is said by Will Patton's character, where when finally they're like, oh no, they're trying to set off the nukes with us not having drilled down yet. And the NASA guy pulls out a gun and is like, you stand down. And he's like, man, what are you doing with a gun in space? It's just a great line.
Yeah.
So I'll give it to Will Patton there.
Yeah. And you literally see the one guy, I can't remember, the dude from Heat. What is his name? William Fichtner, right? He starts as like the prototypical government hard ass, the Fed with a stick up his ass, right?
Yep.
And by the end of the movie has realized that like Bruce Willis is Napoleon on horseback and just needs only to be unleashed onto the field of battle.
Absolutely.
Only problem, it's a deregulation argument, right? The only problem, don't have the government do anything. The government just has to destroy things, right? And it is so exemplary, this comparison of the political impasse we find ourselves in mainstream U.S. politics, which is sort of this argument of like, should we sort of poorly maintain the current political infrastructure or should we burn it down? Right? There's
Mm,
no option to like build something that is actually good, right? That has to
right.
be out. If that is going to happen, that has to come from outside what is legible to our political mainstream.
Yeah. So I'll say, just as we're wrapping up talking about the spaceship cruise, Deep Impact, they literally call it the Messiah. There's some weird God things going on in this film. That crew, they like sort of perform their mission very well, but it just doesn't work. So
Yeah.
it's this idea that everyone's doing what they're supposed to do, and it's like sometimes it just doesn't work out.
Yeah, that's sort of the idea. Yeah, that's the idea in Deep Impact, right? Is all the government failures aren't because they didn't do a perfect job. It's just like that's just the way it is, you know? So it's an argument for why liberalism can't actually make the world better. Is like the
Yeah.
statement that that's ontologically impossible, actually.
Well, and it's the thing that like liberals would have found most terrifying in 1998. The idea that you can't neoliberal your way out of every solution, I think, is
Yeah.
a
Yeah,
terrifying prospect. Um, and I give a quick shout out though to
of
my
course.
boy Gus Partenza, played by John Favreau, who
Oh
is
yeah.
and immediately fucks it all up and gets himself killed on the comet. But you know where he's from?
I
Because
don't
I put this
actually.
in all caps in my notes. It said when it was putting on television that that he
Oh
died.
wait, he's from Harrisburg.
He's from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Let's go to the stars. A true Pennsylvania fuck up. He really
Yeah.
he reached for the stars and fucked it up. So,
You know,
you
he
know,
almost blew up that one asteroid.
but he didn't do it very well. Did he jump? Did he get shot into space? I forget what happened to him, but
Yeah, I think he gets shot into space. Like he's out there and he's like not finishing in time or something.
yeah, it was, so good on that little central
And then
PA
10 years
representation.
later, this guy just
He's,
ruined movies for the rest of time.
who could have imagined? Who could have imagined where he would go? So,
Dude, you get to the end credits of Armageddon and John Favreau is still floating through space and like the Guardians of Galaxy are there and like intercept him and they're like, "No, you're needed on Earth." And they like send him back so that he could direct Iron Man.
yeah, it's like, well, if the comet isn't going to destroy the planet, we've got a plan B. So, what else happens? Let's talk a little bit about society's reaction to the coming
Yeah.
presumed end of the world.
So I want to ask you because I'm
Yeah.
curious what you'll say. If you had to sum up in like one word for each of these movies, what society's reaction to the coming end of the world is, what would you say?
Deep impact. The global society reaction is God will save us. Believe in God. In Armageddon, the reaction is America will save us. So
Mm-hmm.
that's how I would
Yeah.
sum up the two
Interesting. Yeah,
reactions.
that's pretty close to what I was thinking. But so for Deep Impact, if I was going to put it into a word, it would be stoicism.
Oh, okay.
And for Armageddon, I would say nationalism.
Yeah, that's fair.
You know, and almost
That's
and
but
actually
but
almost
but
like
a weird sense of nationalism in that the whole world is watching America figure this out.
yeah, that's true. It's like it's like America worship, whatever the word for
Yes.
that would be, right? It's
Yeah.
like a global nationalism, but not a like new world order. That would be liberal. That
No.
would be we don't like that.
Yeah.
That's Deep
No,
Impact.
no.
It's like the rest of the world will just realize America is great and willingly submit themselves to its eternal hegemony. There will be no
Yes.
need to maintain the invisible empire anymore. People will just willingly pledge themselves to America, their savior.
Yes. So the French will put their baguette in their backpack and pedal on a bike to their little village. We get one of those scenes.
Yeah, because Paris is notably destroyed in
Notably, yeah,
Armageddon.
but it doesn't matter because that's not. There's nothing America can do. Um, the Indians gather outside that famous Hindu holy site, the Taj Mahal, to all hope for the success of the Americans. And the Muslims in Istanbul all gather to they no longer bow towards Mecca, my friend. They bow towards I'm assuming Tampa, Florida is going to be probably what it is. So,
Yeah.
they just kept showing these scenes of the world. It was the same place in each time,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
hoping for America.
It's like
to see it.
that you remember that like joke early in Team America where it's like it shows you like I don't remember what city it is, but it's like Paris or whatever, and then it says like 3,500 miles east of America or whatever the
Yeah.
number would be, right?
Yes, yeah.
That is this movie's entire worldview, right? And that's what makes it interesting.
Yeah.
Whereas as fucked up as that is, you're seeing how like the kind of like imperialist ideologically reconciles their contradictions, right? Whereas Deep Impact, you're seeing how the liberal sort of ideologically reconciles their positions, which is always less interesting because it's usually just sort of like, just do a good job. Just like, indent the paragraphs and keep those margins at 1 inch.
Yep. And I want to come back to this theme, but I want to wait until we're done because it's one of the things that I find really interesting about this film. So let's come back to this in a moment.
All right.
In both films, the spaceship crews fuck up, but have a redemption of sorts. So in Deep Impact, they have that boring plot. They perform their job competently, but it is unsuccessful. And then there's months where they're just traveling back towards Earth, which seems sort of at this point, what are you going back to, buddy? You failed. That's going to be like a harsh performance review at the very
Well,
least.
they have a period where they are deciding whether or not to go back to Earth, and they're like, we could just like live in space for a certain amount of time until we die or whatever, like wait and then try to go to Earth after, and they're like, no, let's go home to die, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's so live. And then they figure out at the last moment that they can fly their spaceship directly into sorry, I always keep forgetting. Is it a meteor? Is that what this is? Or it's a comet? It's a
in
comet,
Deep
sorry.
Impact. Yeah.
I keep fucking that up, but it's a comet, and they fly it directly in because this time that'll work to blow up the
Which
big
again
one.
kind of begs the question of like, why didn't you just do
There
that to begin
has
with?
to have been a way they could have done that originally. I'm sure they said a line somewhere. It's like, we couldn't do this before because reason. So,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
so they destroy the Earth Killer comet. Still one crashes that destroys the eastern seaboard, but they at least destroy the world-ending one. So that's their redemption. And all of the people that ran into the underground government shelters are probably going to look like real assholes when they're coming out
Yeah.
of those in a couple of years, and everyone
Yeah.
over 50 is still alive. So
And we kind of already talked about the Armageddon one in terms of
yeah.
most of the crew just kind of dies, but like Colonel Willie Sharp, played by William Fichtner, kind of like turns on NASA and instead decides to trust the drillers at the end. When NASA's
Yeah.
saying, actually, is interestingly, NASA's telling William Fichtner to do the Deep Impact plan. Like, okay, just do nuclear suicide. And like, Bruce, so I actually think this question of difference really hinges on the question of suicide. Because Deep Impact is like this very sort of, and part of why I bring up stoicism earlier, right? Like part of the film's worldview is just like, we will honorably commit suicide, and that's okay, right? Which
Yeah.
if that's not the Democratic Party, I don't know what
Yeah.
is, right? And then the Republican viewpoint in Armageddon is, no, suicide is for pussies. I would
Yeah.
never commit suicide. And then you're in this situation at the end where, by all reason, William Fichtner is right, right? Like William Fichtner is like, let's just like commit nuclear suicide so that all of humanity isn't destroyed. And Liv Tyler's like, but that's my dad. And Bruce Willis is like, yeah,
Yeah.
dude, don't fucking commit suicide. But then the further irony is that Bruce Willis does commit suicide in the end,
But on
but
his
only of
terms.
himself.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yes.
and on
It's on
his terms.
exactly. It's such an apt analogy for the Democratic Party. I think of Jenny Lerner, who's like, listen, this tidal wave is going to come and absolutely murder us, but I get to stand with my father, Joe Biden, until it is too late to do anything about this. So,
Yeah, yeah,
but it's an honorable way to go, so that's the right thing to do.
exactly. Yeah.
Oh, good lord.
Yeah. And the
Yeah.
reason that Bruce Willis can ultimately commit suicide is because he's not committing suicide for the government. He's not committing suicide to save Earth.
Good
He's committing
point.
suicide to save his daughter and
Yep.
his family
Yep.
and his daughter's boyfriend, right? And so it is the ultimate, as you said, boomer fantasy of I would do anything to protect my family and nothing to protect anyone else. Like, am I willing to
Yeah.
have all of humanity die because of climate change because I don't want to change my behaviors? Absolutely. But also, if somebody like fucks with my family, they're dead. That it's such a crystallization of that ideology.
I don't know that you can even look at it as suicide because they describe it as there's the one line where Ben Affleck's character, realizing the boomer supremacy, says, Harry will do it. I know it. He doesn't know how to fail. Which is
That's the thing. That is exactly it.
do
You
you
need to
how
come
many
up.
boomers do you think stood up and started clapping in the
Yeah,
theater when he said
because yeah,
that?
the boomer would never kill himself, but the one thing he won't do more than not kill himself is not fail. So you have to find a way ideologically to make suicide equal success, and then every boomer is like, absolutely sign me up.
Yeah. Oh God. Yes, great. So in both instances, Devin, Earth is battered but saved.
Yeah.
How would you describe the differences of these two films in this sort of
Yeah.
conclusionary aspect?
Well, it's very interesting, right? Because I feel like in both cases, the and I think this is also telling in relation to the kind of like, suicide slash sacrifice question we were just talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think it's fair to say, let me know if you disagree. In both films, it is like liberal coded places that are primarily destroyed, right? It's like
Ah,
the East Coast, New York gets destroyed in both. Philly is destroyed, I think, in Deep Impact. And then, of course, like Armageddon is even more bold faced about it because it's like New York, Paris, and then like Shanghai or Beijing or something, right?
it was I
Um,
can I just brief aside. I'm was that supposed to be Shanghai because they had what looked like 19th century like Southeast Asian sailing boats,
yeah,
like turtle boats, like just
yeah.
in the
It,
harbor.
it
Like
is
what is
supposed to be
this
Shanghai.
place?
This is what Michael Bay
That's
thinks
Shanghai.
Shanghai looks like in the 1998, right? Um, but
That's
so
insane.
so in a weird
That's an
way,
immensely racist. Sorry, go on.
yeah. So in a weird way, in both films, right? Like kind of liberal metropolitanism is destroyed, and like
Yeah.
middle America is saved, right? But
Hmm.
it's the way in which they are, right? And it comes back to that question of sacrifice, right? In Deep Impact, and again, like, what does this not tell you about the Democratic Party, right? It is like, listen, we, the liberal technocracy, are totally willing to completely destroy our base if it restores this abstract idea of America, right? And then in Armageddon, it hits much differently, where it's like, oh, whatever, New York and Paris and Shanghai got destroyed, but those people suck. We hate those people. Like, of course, they probably didn't have enough blue collar workers to protect them, right? And then, so sacrifices were made, but it's a much less somber and like elegiac take.
Do you know so they have the scene where they land, the astronauts returning from destroying the asteroid. They land, do their little Ben Affleck hugs, Liv Tyler, whatever. And then I don't know do you remember this? It pans to what appears to be like an air show. It's a synchronized F-18 fighter. It's like
I gotta be honest. I think at this point I'm like kind of like started to fade.
I'm sure
that is so funny.
It's literally like they're in their little synchronized, like, so they're really closely flying together, but doing a maneuver that they would do at an air show. Like,
yeah.
Who ordered that at the landing of the crew from destroying the asteroid? So it's like a celebratory, like it's a show.
Yeah. Imagine being the guy who's sitting in that plane, waiting to like take off if the Earth isn't destroyed.
Yeah, it's just absolutely wild. I loved that it ended with that. But in Deep Impact, the resolution of this, of like what comes next for humanity, is we're just going to go back to doing global capitalism after all of this. We're not, in fact, we're not going to change anything. We are going to literally rebuild the Capitol building brick by brick. It's a nightmare of an ending that humanity survived this, and what we learned was nothing. Just keep on trucking.
It is such an expose. I can't believe after these movies came out that people were surprised by the Trump election. And it's obviously easy to say with hindsight, right?
Yeah.
But Deep Impact tells you that nothing is ever going to change. We are at the end of history, and then just sometimes something that has nothing to do with us comes along and kills a bunch of people, right? Armageddon is a incredibly flawed movie, an evil movie, right? Like a movie that is probably personally responsible for various real world deaths, right? But it knows that the world has to change. And that's something that like liberalism is too cowardly to admit, right? And this is why in a world in which like the revolutionary option has been suppressed, the only alternative appears to be this right-wing coded self-destruction.
Yes.
So it's ultimately a question, right, as you say, of what comes next, right? These are ultimately movies not about the Earth being destroyed, but of what is the new Earth going to be, right? And unfortunately or fortunately, we live in the world of Armageddon. We do not live in the world of Deep Impact.
Yeah, correct. I feel what Deep Impact maybe was the world of like 2021 to 2022 of Joe Biden being like, it's okay. Listen, we had a rough time, but we're going back to exactly how it used to be. Don't worry about it.
Or the Obama presidency, right? Like if you did this podcast in 2009, you would think that, and you were dumbass, but, you would think.
You're saying because of the black president. I got you. Go on.
No, right? the idea, although I don't think that's incidental, right? Like that is part of the liberal fantasy of like, progress will eventually, everyone will get to be PMC, right? But, if you're living in 2009 and doing this podcast, you're probably like, ha, fuck you, Armageddon. We have gotten to the moment of liberal progressivism, right? And then that was like so squandered, that moment, right? And I'm skeptical that moment could have changed history as much as it thought it did, right? But even by its own terms, it fumbled the bag so bad, right? That Armageddon came back like a vengeance, right? Because the world still needed to change, right? that those Obama years were just sort of like holding in stasis these contradictions that were still there, right?
Yep.
And
Yeah.
then and also sapped the left of so much energy and power, right? So then you get to 2016 and it's just like status quo versus change. Change wins.
Yeah, and it really is like, what do you come out of these two films feeling? And Deep Impact is just sort of like, well, that sucked. This like this didn't work out well for anyone. At least Armageddon, you're like, yeah, we did it. We
Mm-hmm.
being the
Yeah.
most terrible people on the world and various sex pests, but
Yeah.
we did it.
And it kind of gets to how those kind of figures can still relish in, the victories of the Trump administration, even as their own world is falling apart, right? Because like
Yeah.
owning the libs becomes the compensation.
Yeah. It's the ultimate vindication in this film.
It's so insane. This is pre 9/11, isn't it? Like this movie. Like, and this is the thing. Like, I think Armageddon's a bad movie, and I think Deep Impact is a terrible movie. But Armageddon is like really interesting and seems really important because, like, it was so hard to remember that this was a pre 9/11 movie as you're watching it because it seems so indicative of that political ideology. So you have
Yeah.
to, on some level, have respect for its prescience.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like you see us barreling toward 9/11, and more importantly, our response to 9/11 with that sort of film versus the fever dream. Like maybe Deep Impact is the how do we respond to 9/11 if Gore won, but
Yeah.
that didn't happen, buddy. So
Yeah.
I think Devin, when we come back, I want to talk a little more, as always, about 9/11 and some of the themes about these films. And really, and the one who I think is my favorite character across both films that we haven't talked about that I do want to talk about, which is, of course, say it with me, Lev Andropov. And we will come back and talk about what the fuck's going on with both of these, Armageddon and Deep Impact.
So, Ethan, I brought up that I was surprised, or not surprised, but like as I'm watching it, it was hard to remember that Armageddon was a pre 9/11 film.
Yeah.
But there's obviously also, as a podcast that talks about the historical event of 9/11, a number of other aspects to that I think we should talk about, right? One of which is the fact that, like, essentially 9/11 literally happens in these movies, right? Like the
Yeah.
the specific iconography of the Twin Towers being destroyed is like central to these films, or actually in a weird way inversely central to one of them, right?
Yeah.
But then also I think we can think about what it means to think this is like an oddly pre 9/11 movie, right? Because it's kind of it's thinking about the question that 9/11 provoked before that question has been asked by history, right?
Yeah, and just to remind the audience, the very first scene, pretty much, of Armageddon is meteors impact New York City. I appreciate Michael Bay did not destroy the Twin Towers, I don't think, because he recognized that those buildings were the most boring fucking things that had ever been constructed. It's literally like that fucking box structure of like, hey, let's put the structural supports on the outside, and then we can maximize floor space on the inside, so we can make the most money floor by floor because there won't
Mm-hmm.
be these annoying steel pillars in the interior, and nothing bad will come of that design.
Yeah, yeah.
So he at least recognizes that that's a boring building. So he destroys the Chrysler building. He does a 9/11 on the Chrysler building, which is a much more that's that
Hmm.
it crashes down to the ground. Um so he does that. But then we just like sort of move on also from New York, which maybe is appropriate given how the US responded to 9/11, where they're like, where's Al Qaeda looking next? Birmingham, Alabama, I bet.
Yeah, yeah.
So like it's like after New York needs to suffer to remind us what this catastrophic damage looks like, but the real people who matter are the dudes on oil platforms in the Gulf of Mexico. So we immediately move on from New York, much as we immediately moved on from New York and New Yorkers after 9/11.
Yeah.
So that's Armageddon versus Deep Impact, which I sent you a picture as I was watching it because it just really stood out to me. There's the smaller asteroid or comet, whatever, hits Earth and causes a tidal wave and destroys the whole eastern seaboard. But hilariously, as it's showing the waters receding from New York, seemingly the only two buildings that survived, not in great shape, but did survive, were the Twin Towers.
Wait, so are the Twin Towers spared in both movies?
They show meteors coming towards, it's not clear in Armageddon, but they don't focus on the Twin Towers, I guess I'd say.
And it's interesting, right? Because the films are imagining what will this apocalyptic destruction that's the only thing that could disrupt the end of history look like, right? And it turned out all it had to look like was just the Twin Towers going down, right? And then what's really happening in that moment, as a lot of people have pointed out, isn't just that literal act, right? But the end of this idea of the end of history, right? This challenge to the idea that we've reached the final form of human government, right? As Fukuyama says, right? Yeah. And I think there's all sorts of philosophical caveats that should be made about what I'm saying, but I think in terms of sort of kind of mainstream thought, right? This is sort of a common perception, right? And what we're seeing in both of these films, right, is I think that same question being answered, but in a fantastical way of what could end the end of history. But they both have to imagine it to be something that is completely from without, right? Literally from off the earth. It couldn't simply be the, America's imperial violence coming home to roost.
Yeah, and the extraterrestrial nature of these films, I think, also, I mean, there's just a total muted indifference to the fact that the United States is a global hegemon in 1998. Is it's just there's an entire externalization, and I'd love to chat in both films about how it portrays, for instance, Russia. Since in Armageddon, China doesn't even exist. Essentially, it's just they talk about how we are working together with the great powers of Russia and France to solve this crisis. It's all right. So yeah, that's that.
Yeah, well, so let's maybe talk about Lev Andropov. You had some thoughts about him.
I have so many thoughts. He's my favorite character from across both of these films, played by, what's his name? Peter Stormare? Am I saying that right?
I'm not sure how to pronounce it.
We all know,
Swedish
but you know the guy. Great character actor. And he plays Lev Andropov, the sole cosmonaut on the Mir space station in Armageddon.
Yeah. Or as they refer to it, the Russian space station.
Yeah.
That's the only thing they'll call it.
Yeah, compared with the American space station in the 90s. So we could, even if we wanted to, compare him to Colonel Mikhail Tolchinsky, who's a Russian cosmonaut in Deep Impact. So the very lib approach in Deep Impact is we're working collaboratively with the Russians. We're going to have a joint American-Russian crew that is going to this comet to try and destroy it. Whereas in Armageddon, they're like, no, fuck all of that. America has a plan. We are going to have to stop at Mir to do some refueling. And so they stop there, and there's this Russian cosmonaut, Lev, who's clearly drunk out of his mind as they arrive. He's the only guy there, and he's trying to explain to them how it works and like don't fuck this up, and then they immediately fuck it up, and it's sort of this jokey like everything's sort of breaking on this Russian space station, haha.
Mhm.
Um, but he's an immensely competent individual that
Yeah, and
literally saves
but in
the
this kind of
Earth.
cartoonish way, right? Like
Absolutely.
you're always kind of like you're meant to think this guy's kind of a drunk and a nobody, but he
Mm-hmm.
always seems to like he survives, right, the whole film, and he at multiple times sort of like just figures stuff out in time, right?
Yeah.
And also does stuff when they're on the asteroid, that is helpful, right? And so
Yeah.
what do you think Armageddon is doing ideologically with this Russian guy, right? Because previous to a lot of other these kind of 90s post end of history blockbusters, Russians are still sort of the enemy, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
but in this kind of, or a lot of times they make it like Serbians or something, some kind of other
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
Eastern European coded villain.
Mm-hmm.
Um and you would think maybe on the surface with the Bay film's other ideological investments that the Russians would be equally sort of like incompetent in comparison to the American blue collar worker.
Right.
So what do you make of the fact that Lev becomes this kind of like likable and competent figure?
I mean, to me, it's sort of the like America essentially, well, outside of the, reaping, just outside of pillaging the entirety of Russia after the collapse of the Soviet Union, like American society forgot about Russia essentially. So I think in both films, Russia as a country doesn't exist, but there are Russians. So you have these characters that sort of show up as almost an homage to like, hey, remember when the Cold War happened? We're beyond that, but these people are still around. But it's okay; they can tag along with us on our adventures. Everything's going to be working out. Like Lev in the Mir space station, like he just still has like a flag of the USSR. Like the Russian flag doesn't even
Yeah,
exist
yeah.
on the space station. So it's very much like that is a stand-in for the Soviet Union. So if I'm trying to put myself in the mindset of Michael Bay, I imagine it as sort of this power play of like these, this empire doesn't even exist anymore. That's old news. They'll tag along and we'll gain something from them joining our team.
Mm, yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but
yeah.
like they are joining our team. Like we are the team.
Yeah, and you know what I think another piece of it is? The sort of like right-wing anti-statism of it is also that
Mm.
like, say what you will about the Soviet Union, there were some great guys over there,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, they
like,
had their own Bruce
you know,
Willises over there just dealing
but
with the bullshit.
they were being oppressed by their state. And so, like, if we could just get every country's Bruce Willis together, we would cut through all the red tape and
That
just
is
get
that is
things done.
so pro that is I think that's spot on. I think that is spot on because that is Lev's sort of his approach to like fixing problems is like ignore the manual, you need to hit it with a
Yeah.
crowbar.
And
And
it
he
works.
knows
And
what
you
he's doing
specifically
because
push a woman out of the way to do that, right?
of
Like the
course,
woman's trying to fix
absolutely.
it properly.
Yeah. Yeah, he really is. He is the like Bruce Willis of Russia in this context. So that's yeah, it's almost that continuation of the
It's
end of
the same way
history.
that you could imagine like Michael Bay getting like a drink with a Russian guy and being like, I love this guy. You know what I mean? As
Yeah,
long
yeah.
as he was as much of a fucking like profit driven psycho as Michael Bay is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So uh I'm glad we got to talk about Lev because he is to me my favorite character because he's actually the reason why they all survive. He's immensely competent. He's seemingly unfazed by them waltzing on and destroying the Mir space station. He's like,
Yeah.
I have a job to do, and I'm actually competent at it because I'm not like a random. He was so caught off guard when Ben Affleck's like, yeah, we're actually just like random like drillers from like
Yeah,
the
yeah.
oil business. He actually was sort of caught off guard, the left character, buy that because I guess he was used to a society where like they didn't just reward the most terrible people in the country with the most important jobs. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Um, and so there's a couple other figures I think we want to talk about in regards to both these movies.
okay.
Um, which is that each of them had significant creative involvement from a non-director, right? That
Ah,
is has been kind of a part of our um areas of concern in the past, right? And
mm-hmm.
that's Steven Spielberg with Deep Impact to start. So why don't we talk about Spielberg first, Ethan?
Yeah, Spielberg, I think, was originally brought on to direct what became Deep Impact, and he had a agreement. He had bought some film rights to some Arthur C. Clarke, not the novel, The Hammer of God, that drew the Deep Impact drew from. But then eventually they decided they
Mm-hmm.
changed it enough so that they're like, we're not going to give Arthur C. Clarke any credit. Um, and it apparently really pissed Arthur C. Clarke off that they decided that we're gonna just do our own thing. But then Steven Spielberg was busy, so he couldn't direct it. So he is a an executive producer on Deep Impact.
Mm. But it makes sense, right? Because this is kind of a like it's well, this is why it makes perfect sense because it's not Spielbergian at all aesthetically. Like,
Hmm.
right? Like because it sucks, right? Like Spielberg is good at making movies, right? Like this movie has no juice, right? But
Yeah.
ideologically, it's very Spielbergian.
Yeah, he would have moved on from a lot of scenes a lot quicker than that was done in this film. But
Yeah, and there would have just been visually more interest going on, and there would have been more of a balancing of storytelling, right? Because the thing that really just sinks Deep Impact is it's doing these three plots, and they're just not compellingly
yeah.
edited together.
Well, and Elijah Wood's parents would have been divorced. So that's an important distinction that did not make it through that would have been in the
Yeah,
Steven
yeah, yeah,
Spielberg cut.
yeah. Man, oh my God, they would have been divorced so hard.
They would have been,
Um,
yeah, like their divorce, it would have had to do with him discovering the comment, the fact that his parents were
oh my
divorced.
God, yes, his parents are fighting,
Yeah, so he
right,
goes
and
out
screaming at each
back
other
to
in the
gain
kitchen. He goes
solace.
up, mm-hmm, yep,
Mm-hmm.
and just stare at the sky, where things made sense.
Yeah.
And he sees the comet that's going to destroy Earth.
That would have been it.
But
Yeah.
here's the thing: it would have probably been pretty good.
Yep.
Um,
But hey, but remember though, the Jenny Lerner, her parents were divorced. The dad was remarrying. That's probably what
you're
drove Spielberg was
right.
like,
Oh
this is a
my
great
God! Of
film. Look at
course.
I love the
Yeah.
MSNBC part of the film. That's a
It
great part.
literally ends. It literally ends with like Taya Leone could survive, and instead decides to like go find her father, who kind of is like a shit bag, to be like, I forgive you for like marrying someone besides my mom.
Yeah. Wow.
And her last word as like a living person is daddy. Like as
Oh
they're
yeah.
embracing and the tidal wave is
That's
coming
definitely
for
a
them.
Spielberg little specter of Spielberg right there at
Yeah.
the end of the film. And just a quick shout out, by the way, just before I forget, that we do have the one character in Deep Impact. We have Denise Crosby is the other mother, the mother of Sarah's mother, Vicky, in this. Denise
Oh
Crosby
wait.
from
Oh,
Star
Tasha
Trek.
Yar. I did
Tasha
not
Yar.
recognize her.
Yeah.
Well, in much like in Star Trek tradition, the movie doesn't really have much to do with her and kills her.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's there. Yeah, don't worry about it.
So the other person we want to talk about with Armageddon is that this is a film co-written by J.J. Abrams, right?
I
And
had no idea.
this is very early in his career, right? So like
Uh-huh.
he's obviously doing the television but 1998 is really his origin year, right? He has a few minor credits before then.
Hmm.
But 1998 is when he co-writes Armageddon and then also Felicity starts, right? The
Oh
television show.
wow. Uh-huh.
And then, Alias starts in 2001, Lost in 2004, and he directs his first movie, Mission Impossible 3, in 2006. And after that is when he is being handed the keys to big franchises, right? Star
Mm-hmm.
Trek in 2009, and then Star Wars in 2015. And
Yeah.
has really only done, besides like, Super 8, which is basically just like, Steven Spielberg, the franchise, speaking of,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting, right? Because Deep Impact is the abandoned project of Steven Spielberg, and then Armageddon is this early, super important project for the guy that thinks he is the successor to Spielberg and instead
Yeah.
is the ruiner of every franchise, right? Who has made
Yeah.
like the worst Star Trek movie, the worst Star Wars movie, and if we count Super 8, the worst Spielberg movie. Oh,
God, you're so
and one
right.
of the worst Mission Impossible movies, like at
Oh, good
least
point.
second worst,
Yeah.
maybe worst in my opinion.
Yeah. I think to me, it speaks to the fact that everyone believes that they're living in the end of history, but we can see, the roots are growing of what will take place in the post 9/11 cinematic world at the very least. That is certainly expressive of the larger culture.
Yeah,
That is that initial seed that is going to ruin everything. Um,
yeah, and it's a little unclear to me how much of a ultimate kind of like agency over the final ideologies of this film Abrams is in control of,
there's
right?
no mystery box really, right? So that
Yeah,
seems like
it
he
it
probably
feels like Bay is really the kind of ultimate author of this film, right?
yeah, yeah.
Ideologically.
Uh-huh.
But it does seem like Abrams' desire to live in a world of like just like quippy um little teams. You're seeing a little of that here, right? Where like he's gonna take Star Wars and he's gonna take Star Trek, and he's also gonna take Mission Impossible 3, which is actually weirdly the one good thing he does in Mission Impossible 3 is kind of reintroduce the team as an important part of it.
Uh-huh.
Um, but he sort of like turns those into sort of like quippy ensemble team movies.
Yeah.
Um, and in the process, like almost destroys um,
So what you're
these
telling me is J.J.
properties.
Abrams is probably responsible for all of the rape jokes that Steve Buscemi's character says in Armageddon, most likely. That's okay. I've got it. I've taken
Honestly,
that away.
honestly, I wouldn't be surprised. Allegedly, um, but yeah, and I think it's also like if I'm thinking of this kind of in terms of political metaphors, right? If
Yeah.
in Armageddon, Michael Bay is like the right wing super packed trying to make sure that like the healthcare industry gets even worse.
Yeah.
Um, J.J. Abrams is like opening ZocDoc and being like, hey, you can drink beer at work, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Uh,
and I think it speaks to his ultimate cowardice as an
uh-huh.
artist, is that like he's just
Yeah.
like there to quip up
Yep.
and charm up whatever it is with no real point of view or artistic beliefs. So Ethan, I think
Yeah.
it's time to give these movies our final ratings. And I was thinking
Yeah.
we've been doing in terms of Philip Seymour Hoffman, but
Mm-hmm.
because one of our old rating systems is in the movies for this week, we should
Ah.
unretire Steve Buscemi.
Ah, that is, I think the only thing that would give me pause. Let me just do a quick scan of the script. If there are, I don't even say one. If there are multiple references to statutory rape presented as a joke that his specific character said, maybe we would want to. So let me just quickly let me do a little typing here to figure. Oh, Devin, you're not
Oh,
gonna like what I found. It seems to be recurring jokes for Steve Buscemi's character around having sex with underage women.
and just to confirm, that would be in the film Armageddon that was nominated for 4 Oscars, albeit
Jesus
for,
Christ.
song and technical categories.
Hmm.
But, really, we live in just a sick society.
Yeah, you
Um,
think that was gonna be the deal breaker for the boomers? As soon as they heard the line, Harry doesn't fail. Like it doesn't matter what came before that. They're like, yeah, yeah, no, this is the film of the year.
yeah.
Um, so I guess let's stick with the Hoffman, if that works for you.
All right. So let's stick with the Hoffman. Ethan, what do you got for this movie in terms of Hoffman?
I think we might be slightly different in that I actually I disliked Armageddon more than Deep Impact. I didn't care for either film. But so I'd say like out of a 5 scale, I might give like 1.5 Hoffmen to Deep Impact. But again, this is a very lib film, Deep Impact. And so I think for me, it's going to be the Philip Seymour Hoffman from The Big Lebowski, where he's like, at the end of the day, he's Brandt. That character is working for the rich dude, the capitalist. Like, we're, it's sort of like, let's just maintain this order of things. Whereas I'm gonna give only 1 out of 5 Philip Seymour Hoffman to Armageddon, and I'm gonna give it the Philip Seymour Hoffman from Punch Drunk Love, who is, of course, a very sort of boomer anarchy, sort of whatever you want to describe it as character in that film. And that's going to be the Philip Seymour Hoffman that he gives to. Neither film gets a whole lot of Hoffman, but very different sort of Hoffman that I think each film gets. What would you say for this, Devin?
So for this rating, I decided to go to the year 1998 when both these films come out.
Oh wow.
And so there are very conveniently 5 Philip Seymour Hoffman performances in 1998. Montana, in which he plays Duncan, The Big Lebowski, in which
Sure.
he plays Brandt,
Mhm.
Next Up Wonderland, whatever that is, in which he plays Sean.
And he was credited as Phil Hoffman, also
Yes.
having the Wikipedia open.
He is in Happiness, in which he plays Alan, who I believe is a pedophile.
Oh, cool.
Or like some kind of sexual pervert, like that is a very subversive movie to say the least. And then Patch Adams, in which he plays Mitch. So I will be giving Deep Impact 0 of these, and I will be giving Armageddon the problematic one.
That's fair. It's just Morgan Freeman is just does have that voice, and I think it's so overdone at this point, but he really is. You sort of when he's sort of sharing like, hey, things have failed, you're kind of like, well, we gave it our best. This guy strikes a really productive argument about why the government really tried to save us, and they failed not for any fault of their own,
Yeah.
but because sometimes, sometimes the peach falls from the tree. It just lands a little too hard on the rock and gets a little bruised, or whatever analogy he would say. And that to me, like I was,
That was I
you
gotta
know,
I gotta be honest. That was giving a little more Ed Norton in the Bob Dylan movie for me.
yeah, there's a little bit of that. But it was, that's sort of maybe it was like a lib echo where I'm just sort of harkening back to the 1990s of being like, what if we could figure it all out? Wouldn't that be so convenient if
Yeah,
if someone could actually just if we could just like, through competence, just everything would be fine and it was the end of history. So I gave it a little
yeah.
extra, but not good films, either of them.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Great
1998
films for our theme, for our podcast, but
they really are. I mean, if we're talking about the cultural detritus of the 20th century, this is some of the last and most potent of it by the strict definition. You know, this really is the death throes of the 20th century on screen.
Yep.
Well, thank you, listeners, for joining us on this episode of You're Tall, But I'm Standing in Front of You. You can follow us on social media at Your Tall Pod. You can follow Ethan at Mathesippi. Follow me at Stale Cooper. You can email us at yourtallpod@gmail.com. And as always,
keep circling that trade.